How's it going, everyone? Braden here with Look Like You Lift, and welcome to the Look Like You Lift 15 podcast, where we're going to teach you how to look like you lift in 15 minutes. Guys, I'm really excited to bring on today's guest.
I'll get rid of it.
No, okay, that's good. I'm really excited to bring on our next guest, Steve Hall, who is the owner of Revive Stronger. He is a professional natural bodybuilder and has many accolades when it comes to competitive bodybuilding. So we're going to pick his brain today on some of the most effective dieting techniques that we can use to get really, really lean, get really, really shredded while holding on to as much muscle as we possibly can. So really excited to pick his brain on that. And he's back just in time.
All right. She knew what she was doing. She's like, I know you're going to ignore me now for a period of time on this podcast. I'm going to piss you off.
That's okay, man. But yeah, so like I just told everybody, so I would love to pick your brain about dieting techniques. Since you're a natural bodybuilder, you have to learn how to lose as much body fat as possible and maintain as much muscle mass as possible. And that's, fairly doable for people who are on drugs and things, but it's more challenging for people who have to rely on themselves. So I would love to pick your brain on some of the dieting techniques that we can use to lose as much fat as we can while maintaining our muscle mass and possibly even building muscle mass.
For sure. So yeah, it's us naturals. We don't have the kind of performance enhancing drugs or the I don't even know how to say it. We don't have the ability to inject testosterone or whatever. So we have to be careful to maintain as much muscle mass as possible. Not that kind of those guys are guaranteed, but there's far fewer risks. And The risks are pretty low for naturals. It's only when you're really pushing potentially too aggressive a deficit, or you're pushing a deficit at a period of time when you are unable to perform in the gym, potentially having low body fat, or you've just been dieting for a long period of time. So in terms of protecting muscle mass, it all comes from being able to maintain sufficient training performance. I always say training is the match that lights the fire for muscle gain. That's the key. That's what's going to keep the muscle sticking around. If you don't give it a reason to stick around, it's not going to. But then we also have protein and protein muscle synthesis, which is muscle protein synthesis even, which is what we're trying to promote as much as possible, because in a calorie deficit, muscle protein breakdown is increased because we're in a calorie deficit. So to kind of net at the end of the day, kind of extra muscle, we need to really be bolstering muscle protein synthesis, which comes through really getting enough protein and spreading it through the day. So getting enough protein, spreading that nicely through the day to bolster muscle protein synthesis as much as possible, and then also keeping our training quality high and relevant towards hypertrophy, doing enough but not too much, because our recovery is also kind of brought down. So it's all about kind of being careful to manage training fatigue, manage even little things that maybe didn't matter as much previously, like nutrient timing, carbohydrate timing, so that we're fueled for our workouts. Whereas previously, maybe when we're in a mass, we're just kind of always prepared for our sessions. And then taking care of the details like sleep. It's becoming more and more of a bigger thing for people now, and they're aware of how important sleep is. But in a diet phase, it becomes even more important, because that's really where you rest, rejuvenate, and that's where you bring a lot of potential benefits in terms of your training performance. But also, there's even studies showing now people who have worse sleep, they just are more likely to liberate muscle tissue versus fat tissue. So if you can have better sleep, you're going to protect your muscle tissue even further. So I would say those are some big rocks for me, like making sure you're training specific towards muscle growth and not doing too much or too little, making sure you're getting sufficient protein, spreading that through the day, and then really prioritizing kind of rest, recovery, and sleep, and making sure that that's a big priority in your life. And that should really help you maintain lots of muscle. And within there, you also don't want to be in too big a calorie deficit. So I always like to think about your calorie deficit should be proportional to the amount of body fat you're holding. So if you're really kind of holding lots of body fat, you can be in a big calorie deficit. But as you get leaner and leaner, you want to kind of bring your calorie deficit down, because you're more likely to pick at other tissue, which you don't want to. So me sitting here at under 10% body fat, if I'm in a 1% rate of loss per week, 1,000 calorie deficit, for example, that's a big risk. My training performance is probably going to go to crap. My sleep is as well. Mm-hmm. But at the start of my prep, when I'm closer to 20%, man, I've got so much fat tissue to just give up, that being in a 1% kind of a 1% rate of loss per week and a big calorie deficit makes complete sense, because I can take it on. So yeah, those are probably some key things. I know I kind of went on a long run.
No, that's really good. Yeah. So I think what I would like to do is take these big rocks that you've gone over and kind of break them down a little bit more.
Yeah.
So with your training, I know there's a lot of talk about, how you should be training in a cut. Does your training look any different in prep than it does when you're putting on size?
Not particularly. The
Mm,
same principles absolutely apply. I'm training in my cut as if I'm training to grow muscle. The fact is, especially as I get leaner and longer into the deficit, the chances of me growing muscle are much less. At
sure.
the start of a cut, maybe there's something going on there, especially for less advanced individuals. They can kind of use some of that fat that they're kind of liberating and put it towards even muscle growth if they're really getting things in check. So for me, the biggest difference is my average training volume is less
Mm,
because I just don't have the energy surplus, the kind of carbohydrates to help recovery and fuel more training. So my average training volume is maybe 25% less, maybe more than that. And I'm just trying to maintain a lower kind of set number overall. But in terms of kind of the intensity or rep ranges, relative intensities, things like this, it's very, very similar. And then the other big thing that probably changes is kind of exercise selection. In when you're getting very lean, certain movements just start to feel funky. So I think a lot of people have probably experienced this where they lose a lot of weight around their waist and suddenly kind of squats feel really kind of awkward and uncomfortable because you just haven't got that core that you used to have, that when you have like that powerlifting belly people talk about, and you can kind of have that thick waistline for deadlifts, for squats, and they feel great when you're a bit bigger. But when you get kind of really quite lean, those start to beat you up a bit more. Something I called actually from Mike Israetel, the stimulus to fatigue ratio of movements tends to just shift a little bit, so that when you're in a deficit and when you've been dieting longer, machines, movements that kind of take out the core and they secure you in the lift start to become more in favor because you haven't got that extra kind of the thicker waistline, the extra fat between joints and tissues that just allow you to kind of get away with those really stimulative movements, but very fatiguing when you haven't got the surplus there or the extra fat.
sure. I love that. So you're reducing volume just a little bit to make sure that recovery is still in check, and to make sure that you're not like overloading and stress, right?
So my philosophies towards training volume kind of follow the volume landmarks. I don't know if that's something you've heard of
Mhm.
previously. Yeah, the volume landmarks from Mike Israetel. So I like to consider those for every single phase. And the biggest changes when you're in a mass, maybe I can start off a mesocycle at my minimum effective volume being maybe 8 to 10 sets. And my max recoverable volume, so the most I can do and recover from, is all the way up at like 20 odd sets. For some muscle groups, maybe past 20, like my back. Whereas within my cut, my minimum effective volume is maybe similar. It potentially is even theoretically a little bit higher because I'm in a calorie deficit. So I kind of need something to help promote muscle protein synthesis. So maybe even more training, but it's about similar to where I am during a mass. But my ability to add sets and move through MRV is like, it shrinks every mesocycle. And at this point, I'm lucky if I can get away with adding any set volume because it's actually a big additional amount of total volume. And I just tend to not be able to recover from it. So my movement from like a week 1 and then through to like a week 5, say, before a deload, I'm just adding far fewer sets. So my average total volume is much, much lower. So that's how I tend to go about things. Definitely something I've made a mistake in the past is thinking I can add sets just like I did in a mass.
Sure.
And my training quality just starts really going into the shitter because to maintain that amount of volume, I just can't maintain the intensity, and load on the bar comes down, reps come down. I'm just too fatigued. So that's a big thing I've changed this prep actually, and it's helped a lot.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pick your brain a little bit more about your approach to volume. But so with your intensity during training, you're still keeping intensity relatively high. I mean, are you taking sets to failure? Are you leaving reps in reserve?
So this is something I do both. So at the
Mm,
start of my mesocycles, I tend to be further away from failure. So I might be at a 3-2 RAR on isolation based lifts, or a
mm,
3-4 RAR on my big compound lifts. So I've got plenty in the tank, but I know I'm training kind of quote unquote hard, things are slowing down, having to really concentrate to get that last rep out. And then every week thereon, I just add a little bit of load or an extra rep, and my RAR, my reps in reserve, tend to drop by about 1. So then that gives me kind of 4 or 5 weeks of accumulation before I'm hitting, I got no reps left.
yeah.
I don't know, people have different definitions of failure. I don't know if some people will probably say I never fail. In my eyes, like naught RAR is as far as I want to take it. So no more good reps left. It's rare for me to take it to the point where I'm like, I don't know, at the bottom of a hack squat and can't get up, because I know the rep before that is the rep that I'm going to stop at. So less experienced people might want to experience that horrible sensation sometimes, but at my level, I'm happy enough that I'm pushing to that point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's shift gears a bit. I want to talk more about sleep, because sleep is something that I harp on all the freaking time. And so what do you have? I mean, so what do you do as far as your nightly routine and your morning routine to optimize your rest and your recovery?
Cool. So yeah, there's a big kind of component towards sleep relating to circadian rhythm. So you can already start, like you said there, at the start of your day, and you can kind of align your day in a like quote unquote optimal way to help us get to sleep, which has been completely kind of destroyed in our modern society, because we end up kind of having big dinners and we end up having like screens at night, and like and during the day we can have lights that keep it bright, whereas really, like when we're cavemen, it would be like candlelight and dimming down. So I do manipulate my activity to kind of help with sleep, my light kind of exposure, and then my eating as well. So with kind of exercise and activity, it's fairly simple. Just kind of exercise during the day, get some kind of calories burnt, do some weightlifting, whatever you're going to do, get some steps in, preferably outside, and you can align that with kind of your circadian rhythm, get some light early doors. So I tend to go for a walk first thing in the morning with my dog, which is great. It's convenient. I get to like nail a lot of rocks in one kind of way that way. And then also when I get back to my desk, I have a seasonal affective disorder light, so a SAD light, which has 10,000 lux, and I just blast that on my face for like the next hour, just to make sure that my body is like, yeah, you're awake. And then through the day, with light, at least in the evening, 2 hours before bed, I tend to put on blue light blockers. So blue light can suppress melatonin. So melatonin's the hormone that allows us to get to sleep, or helps us get to sleep. So I just like to put those on. I do watch TV in the evening as well. So I have to admit that I do that one. But if you're not watching TV, you're probably all right. Just dim the lights, or kind of just have candles on if you can. That'd be amazing. So I do those things kind of with my light rhythm activity. So in the evening, just trying to chill out, basically, try and reduce stress. That's why like Netflix and chill, perfect. Just sit down, watch some trash TV or something. And then eating, I tend to try and constrain calories somewhat within like a 12-hour eating window. But it just works well for me. Like 8 to 8 p.m., 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. tends to work pretty nicely for me, and not eating anything huge before bed. So last big meal is 2 hours before bed. If I'm having anything else, it's normally some protein, just like an hour, half an hour pre-bed, and that shouldn't impact my sleep too much. So those are most things I'm doing. And then my bedroom, I just always like to just call it like, keep it like a cave. So make it cool, dark, quiet, all those good things. If it's particularly hot, if it's like a heat wave or something's going on, having a hot shower or bath like an hour before bed can actually help to like do the opposite to what you'd expect. Almost like having a hot shower can actually help cool down, can remove, lower your core body temperature, which can help you initiate sleep.
Yeah, because you're actually turning your body into a radiator at that point.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a weird sensation actually. You have to be in that hot kind of bath or shower for long enough for it to happen. But yeah, you got essentially radiating heat. It's drawing it from your core, like you exactly said. And we need that to initiate sleep, so that can help. I have a fan in my bedroom, and actually probably the biggest game changer for me, because we are right by a railway, so we have a train going past all the time, and I'm a hot sleeper, so I have the windows open, was having white noise. That tremendously helped my sleep, because it just got rid of everything really, which is great. So yeah, those are
Is that white noise from your fan, or do you have like another speaker? Or
I have an actual speaker, which was a big upgrade to the fan. The fan just wasn't loud enough. Some people have loud enough fans probably, but this one was just like, I was like, I really wanted a louder fan. It didn't provide enough noise. And then I also do ashwagandha, KSM 66 pre-bed, particularly in prep when I'm a bit more stressed. That tends to help. And then magnesium, I do that year round, magnesium biglycinate before bed. Lots of athletes are a bit low on magnesium, and it seems to help sleep too. So I think those are the main things that I do to promote sleep.
Yeah, that's a gold mine of tips for rest for sure. I think one other thing that I want to talk about is I think everybody has this question when it comes to losing weight is cardio. So what is your approach to cardio, both in like with your clients and in you and prep?
Cool. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, cardio's people. Some people think it's like absolutely necessary for fat loss, and
Right.
thankfully, we know like an energy deficit is kind of what you need, and then you need to promote muscle retention. And once you've done those two things, that's where then fat loss comes. So cardio is definitely not required for fat loss at all. It's just for people who want to create an energy deficit via not just food and their kind of physical activity from weight training and from maybe their NEAT, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis, can be things like steps or like me standing here, for example, that sort of thing. So my preference is to keep cardio limited. And if you are to do cardio, I prefer low intensity, steady state, just because the higher intensities are too similar to your weight training, which can impact your weight training, your ability to recover, which, as we discussed already, is so important to promoting muscle growth / retention. So if someone's to do cardio, I tend to prefer them to do something low impact. So not like the like the stairs or whatever, which are pretty horrific, or doing sprints, but more like a fast walk or use the cross trainer or something like that instead. Just to burn calories. I kind of think of it like turning your car engine on and not moving. You're just looking to just burn energy. So for a lot of my clients, I actually get them tracking their steps and try and get them to have a high step count that's within their lifestyle and that's reasonable to them. So for this prep, I've done 0 cardio and I just have an average step count of about 15 to 17,000 steps per day, which allows me to have a good amount of energy output and not need to include any cardio within that.
That's awesome. So with your 17,000 steps, that's a lot. So are you doing like dedicated bouts of walking right now?
Not really. I kind of hit this because of having a dog and doing
Okay.
most of her walks, which is kind of convenient. And I also commute to my gym. So
Okay, cool.
Combining the commutes and walking the dog, it ends up just topping up to about that number. The only time maybe I go out of my way a little bit is on the weekend, but I like to just get out and walk on the weekend anyway. So it's like a nice break from being stood at this desk a lot of the time. So yeah, it's a high step count, but it's kind of relatively normal for me.
Sure. That's awesome, man. Well, we've covered a lot of gold nuggets in such a short amount of time. Can you think of like any piece of just another gold nugget that you would give to anybody who's trying to lose weight?
Yeah, my probably biggest tip for people looking to lose weight is really give yourself like a plan and routine, have structure. I think normally the people I have the most success with, clients that have the most success, is they kind of have almost meal plans get a bit shunned because it's like, oh, you don't have to eat the same foods. You can have flexibility. Like if it fits your macros is great. It can be, but it can also be a nightmare for people because they just have no structure. Whereas I think if you have some general rules for your day of eating, like I'm going to have protein spread through 4 meals. I'm going to eat a carbohydrate source with my pre and post workout meal. And then I'm going to eat a range of fruit and veggies. If you just have something like that to follow, it just gives you so much structure and it's much easier to follow that route. It's kind of like, I don't know, trying to travel to a certain destination and not have a map and a plan to get there. You're just like, oh, I'll just do it on the go. It's like, it's going to be stressful, difficult. You might not get there. It's certainly going to take more time versus looking the night before and knowing exactly where you're going. So I'd say a plan would help tremendously for people. It sounds super simple, but a lot of people just jump in and they're like, oh yeah, I'll track on the go. People aren't great at doing that. Or they're kind of try and track after they've done all their day of eating. And again, people are poor at remembering what they've eaten and they tend to overeat. So I think having a plan like will help people so much.
Yeah, I love that. And one big thing that you said about meal plans is, it gives you the structure. But one thing that I love to do is, when we have kind of the same thing that we're eating every day, like I get it's monotonous, but at least we have good data to work off of and we can make very educated decisions off of that.
Yeah.
So with your clients, do you kind of follow that? Do you have like a structured like food by food list that you want them to follow, or are you more if it fits your macros?
A blend of the two for sure. So I like them to have the skill set to be as flexible as they possibly need to be. So if they're thrown like, I don't know, just a random day, like they have to work away from home and they are like, I can't follow my meal plan. They have the skill set to understand, okay, I can go to this little shop on the corner and pick a meal that suits the macros that I need to today. But for the most part, if they have that very structured and regime kind of eating, maybe they have like 3 meals that they know are basically the same every day. And then the evening is a bit more variable with their kind of loved one. It just really helps drive results. I never tell them like, you have to eat this or this. It'll be a case of recommending you have spread your protein like this. I recommend you eat this many fruits and vegetables, get about this much fiber, but you can pick like pasta, rice, oats, I don't care. As long as it fits the bill for what we're trying to achieve in this kind of certain context. There's a lot of different foods that you can eat. And I think it's great to have that freedom as well.
100%. I love that, man. Well, Steve, thank you so much for hopping on here and giving us so much information, so much knowledge. Where is the best place for our listeners to come find you if they have more questions or want to inquire about your coaching?
For sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. And I would say revivestronger.com. Our website is probably the best place. Coaching, our podcasts can be found there as well, or all the members site, everything like that. So, and then I'm Revive Stronger on Instagram, probably where I'm most active and put out the most content. So yeah, if people want to reach out to me there as well, they can do.
Perfect. We'll have all those links in the description so they can go check you out. Thanks for coming onto our podcast and listening to us and listening to Steve Hall's knowledge on how to lose weight while building and maintaining as much muscle as possible. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, like and subscribe, and make sure to go follow Revive Stronger on YouTube and Instagram and check out their website, revivestronger.com. And we'll see you in the next one.